Imagine you have exactly 36,000 days to live a life of absolute perfect selflessness.
All right.
And if that timer runs out and you haven't completely solved the puzzle of loving humanity, you literally spend the rest of eternity locked in a spiritual chicken coop.
A chicken coop. That is quite the premise.
It really is. Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. Today we are opening up the source code to a completely different operating system for reality.
Yeah, and our source material for this deep dive is a single, highly detailed historical document. We're looking at a speech from January 23rd, 1983.
Delivered by Reverend Sun Myung.
Exactly, the controversial founder of the Unification Church.
Now, when most people hear the term Unification Church or, the Moonies,
Mm-hmm.
their minds probably go straight to those massive weddings in giant stadiums.
Right, or maybe the movement's political influence during the Cold War.
Yeah, but very few people have actually looked under the hood at the detailed cosmological blueprint driving the entire thing.
Yeah.
So our mission today isn't to validate this theology.
And we definitely aren't here to condemn it either.
Exactly. Our goal is to just objectively pull apart its internal logic. We want to understand exactly how this specific worldview is constructed and what it reveals to you about human devotion, family, and our search for meaning.
And returning to your operating system analogy, this text really does read like a back-end manual for human existence.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's like reading the source code for society. Yeah. You might not want to install it on your own computer, but seeing how the code is written is incredibly fascinating.
It is. It combines this vast theology, intimate family dynamics, and a very specific defense mechanism into one sweeping, almost mathematical formula.
So to understand the rules of this OS, we first have to look at its ultimate goal, right? What the text calls the ideal world.
Yeah, and the text makes a massive claim right out of the gate. It posits that if the human fall in the Garden of Eden hadn't happened, the world today would have one unified culture.
Expressed in one unified language.
Right. The division of languages and cultures isn't seen as some natural human evolution. It's framed strictly as Satan's work.
Like a deliberate tactic to cause chaos.
Exactly, to prevent humanity from communicating with God, which logically dictates how they view global conflict.
Because in this ideal world, conflicting ideologies wouldn't even exist.
None at all. The text argues there wouldn't be competing systems trying to solve human problems. No democracy versus communism.
Just Godism.
Yes, Godism, completely God-centered ideology. And from this core code, the text says we get true parentism, which creates true childrenism.
Resulting in true familyisms, like a set of perfect ideological nesting dolls.
It really is. Everything in the universe boils down to what Moon calls the heavenly four-position foundation.
Which is God, parents, and children. But there's a pretty radical theological twist here. The text argues that God is not just this aloof, almighty figure sitting on a cloud.
No, the text argues that God actually needs humans.
Yeah, Moon explicitly states that without us, God cannot truly be God.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a profound shift in how we usually think about omnipotence.
Right.
The logic here is that love requires an object. Even if God is an infinite subject of love, without an object to receive and reflect that love back,
The circuit is broken.
exactly, God remains fundamentally incomplete. So Moon takes these massive macro-political problems of 1983, like the Cold War, and insists the only solution is this micro-level family structure.
So what does this all mean for the individual? Because I want to push back on that nesting doll structure for a second.
Go ahead.
If we are aiming for a world with zero ideological diversity, just a single godism, doesn't that remove human individuality?
Well, the text would argue...
It sounds a bit like an orchestra where every single musician is forced to play the exact same instrument. You get perfect unity, sure, but you lose the complex harmony of different perspectives.
Right, but the text counters that true harmony only exists when every component operates totally for the sake of the others, perfectly aligned with the center. It argues that having multiple subjects claiming to be the center, which is how it views democracy, is the literal root of all human conflict.
But a system demanding complete ideological conformity requires an immense amount of energy to stop human nature from rebelling.
How do you get humans to voluntarily erase their own boundaries?
The text introduces a highly specific mechanism for this, which it calls true love.
Ah, yes. True love versus secular love.
Right. It draws a surgical distinction between what the secular world thinks love is and what this theology demands it must be. Secular love is described as shallow.
And greedy. He specifically targets modern romantic love, right? Like American teenagers getting married for the thrill of it.
Yeah, claiming that this kind of self-centered love inevitably becomes routine and leads straight to divorce.
He actually, playfully but sharply, calls out American women in the audience.
Oh, yeah, the sermon material comment.
Yeah, he calls them good material for his sermons because, according to him, they enter marriage with a greedy desire to just receive love.
But true love, the text argues, is a spiral action, like a whirlpool.
Or a tornado that constantly penetrates deeper toward the center. And to explain this physics of love, he uses a very specific, memorable metaphor.
The love bag.
The love bag, yes.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because a love bag is such a bizarre, childlike image for a cosmic force.
It is, but he explains it clearly. He says to his audience, imagine your parents have a big love bag and you stick your hand into it.
Okay.
That bag isn't going to reject your hand. The nature of the bag is that it's going to pull you further in. He says God's love bag works the exact same way.
So it exerts a gravitational pull.
Exactly. It redefines love from an emotion into an inescapable force of nature.
But I mean, is human nature really a bottomless bag? It feels like he's totally dismissing the reality of human burnout here.
How do you mean?
Well, if your only purpose is to constantly give and be pulled deeper into sacrifice, what happens when you physically and emotionally have nothing left? What's fascinating here is that the text anticipates that exact feeling of exhaustion and completely recategorizes it.
Oh, wow. It equates any selfishness, even basic self-preservation or needing a break, with the satanic realm.
Wait, really? Just needing a break?
Yes. Conversely, absolute self-sacrificing altruism is the godly realm. Think about the psychological impact of that.
Redefining personal boundaries as evil.
Exactly. You create an operating system where the individual is programmed to constantly override their own physical and emotional limits.
And you don't have all the time in the world to do this either. Which brings us to the ticking clock.
The 36,000 days.
Right. Knowing that true love is this absolute gravity, the text puts a strict time limit on the listener to achieve it.
It emphasizes that existing for the sake of others isn't just a nice moral idea. It's the only way to avoid the literal destruction of global society.
Criticizing both the U.S. and the Soviet Union for seeking only their own national interests.
Yeah, and then it brings that global warning right down to the listener. Perfection can only be attained here on Earth.
Not in the afterlife.
Right. It frames a human lifespan as roughly 100 years.
Which is exactly 36,000 days.
And from God's perspective, 36,000 days is just a tiny dot, less than a breath.
But it's your only chance to quote the text, hook God for eternity with true love.
He compares humans to fishermen using true love as bait.
But the flip side is terrifying. If you fail to achieve this universal love on earth, the afterlife is miserable.
Right, the chicken coop.
Yeah, the text vividly warns that if you only achieve a selfish, narrow love, like just loving your own spouse, your eternity in the spirit world will be spent confined in a small chicken coop.
Just you and your spouse stuck in a tiny cage watching the total freedom of everyone else outside.
It turns this 36,000-day earthly life into an ultra-high-stakes escape room.
That's a great way to put it.
If you don't solve the puzzle of absolute selflessness before the timer runs out, you are locked in a spiritual chicken coop forever.
We're essentially talking about the concept of spiritual currency here.
Right.
The speech uses this fear of eternal confinement to drive urgency in the present. It fundamentally shifts how a follower would value their daily actions.
Your money, your career,
Yep.
that doesn't matter compared to gathering that spiritual currency.
Exactly.
But if living for others is the ultimate hack to escape the chicken coop, why was the Unification Church facing so much global opposition in 1983?
Well, the speech provides a fascinating historical and theological defense for that. It argues that being hated is actually proof of success.
The calculus of persecution.
Yes. The text outlines 8 stages of religious restoration, starting from the bottom, the servant of servant position, up through adopted child, mother, and finally the parental religion.
Which is the true parents.
Right, and persecution is framed as an absolute necessity to climb those stages.
Because whenever God's agent appears in the satanic world, they are treated like an alien spy.
Exactly. The text cites biblical figures like Jacob deceiving Esau and Laban and Moses taking Egyptian wealth.
Basically arguing that heavenly representatives have rights over the secular world because Satan has accumulated debts through persecution.
Yes. Moon views his own immense global persecution, especially peaking in 1976, as a balance scale.
As the West pushes him down with persecution, The East and South America will rise up to support him.
Opponents are essentially signing over their blessings to him by persecuting him.
But doesn't that incentivize a group to deliberately provoke society? It turns opposition into a bizarre badge of honor.
This raises an important question about how high-demand groups operate. This framework is brilliant for inoculating followers against criticism.
Every angry family member or critical news article is no longer a reason to doubt.
It is mathematical proof that the theology is working.
Wow. But having established that persecution is a good thing, the speech then asks followers to apply this grueling logic to their own literal families.
Right, their relationship with the true parents. This brings us to the Cain-and-Abel dynamic.
And the home church providence. The text explains that traditional Christianity failed its role in 1960 to accept the Lord of the Second Advent.
So the Unification Church had to start over from the bottom.
And they represent Abel, the younger, faithful son, while the outside world and traditional Christianity represent Cain, the elder, fallen son.
Here is the emotional climax of the theology. To restore the universe, the father must unconditionally love the rebellious eldest son, Cain.
Meaning the outside world.
Yes, before he can claim the faithful second son, Abel.
Meaning his own followers. So Myung states he must sacrifice and neglect his own followers to love the world.
And he tells his followers they must do the exact same thing. Prioritize the church's mission over their own spouses and children.
Wives must not be jealous of the women assisting their husbands. Husbands must not complain.
Even Moon admits he hasn't loved his own children like a normal dad because, as he says, we were still in a fallen environment.
I mean, I'm just floored by this emotional demand. So you're told to view yourself as Abel, meaning your explicit role in this cosmic family is to be the child who gets put last.
Yes.
It's like being told you're the favorite, but the proof you're the favorite is that you have to eat table scraps while the rebellious kid gets the feast.
It's a staggering emotional weight placed on the individual. The text claims that millions of past years live in every cell of your body.
So a follower's personal failure dooms their entire ancestry.
Exactly. It's this total subsumption of the individual into the cosmic mission, which leaves absolutely no room for personal boundaries.
Okay, let's summarize how this 1983 text constructs this airtight, self-reinforcing universe.
It's quite a loop.
It starts with a grand vision of cosmic unity. One language, no ideological conflict. It powers it with a definition of love that demands total self-erasure.
Right.
It puts a 36,000-day ticking clock on it, reframes all outside hatred as spiritual currency, and finally asks followers to accept emotional neglect as the highest form of universal salvation.
And understanding these internal mechanisms is really crucial for comprehending how people can dedicate their entire lives to movements that outsiders just find incomprehensible.
Right, because if you buy into the source code, everything else logically follows.
Exactly.
Well, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today. The text argues that true love requires the complete destruction of personal boundaries and self-interest.
Yeah.
But if you completely erase yourself to serve the universe, who is actually left to experience the joy of that universe, does absolute selflessness eventually just look like non-existence?